Fang Chen gave a dry cough and said helplessly, "My domain is not yet fully replenished." As expected, the worst-case scenario indeed came to pass. This ancestral Dao divine ring was actually harder to fill completely than ordinary divine rings. Fortunately, he had kept a trick up his sleeve and early on had firmly passed the blame onto Qiqi. Upon hearing this, Qiqi's face showed an expression of disbelief. How is that possible? She had traveled far and wide and had seen domains as countless as the hairs on an ox. How could there be a domain that not even a sage law could replenish? However, the contract law would never lie. Fang Chen's domain was indeed still not recovered. Qiqi, with a face full of reluctance, took out another small divine ring and said through gritted teeth, "I misjudged." As her words fell, she flicked her finger again. The small divine ring transformed into a streak of light and was flicked into the back of Fang Chen's head. Qiqi breathed out, thinking this time it should finally be over, right? However, she froze slightly, her expression blank, because that contract law still hovered, undissipated. Her eyes widened as she looked at Fang Chen in disbelief. "Don't tell me the domain still hasn't recovered." Fang Chen shrugged his shoulders, looking innocent. "Isn't it obvious?" Qiqi opened her mouth. For a moment, she truly didn't know what to say. Qiqi had no choice but to take out a third small divine ring and hurled it toward the back of Fang Chen's head with all her might. This has to be enough, right? But what made her instantly freeze on the spot was that the contract law was still there. This is broad daylight seeing ghosts, 3 laws, yet they can't fill the domain of a mere spirit transformation cultivator. Qiqi grew somewhat anxious and simply took out 2 small divine rings, throwing them both violently. However, the contract law still remained. I refuse to believe this evil. This time Qiqi took out 5 and threw them all together. But what made her as if turned to stone was that the contract law remained unmoved. She stood dazed for a full 10 breaths before muttering in a daze just what went wrong. At this moment, Fang Chen was also somewhat surprised in his heart. This shouldn't be 10 already, and it still hasn't recovered. Even for an ancestral Dao, it should have been filled by now. He looked at Qiqi, who was questioning her life, and gave a dry cough, softly reminding, "Senior Qiqi finished resting." Qiqi snapped back to her senses and glared fiercely at Fang Chen. "Fine, I want to see just how much of my stuff your domain can devour." Qiqi was furious, and in one breath took out a full 40 divine rings, starting to throw them one by one at the back of Fang Chen's head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Until she had thrown the 20th, the contract law still persisted. Qiqi's palms were starting to tremble. She had been fleeced so thoroughly that she didn't even have her underwear left. But she could only steel herself and continue. Finally, after throwing the 30th, Qiqi completely broke down, looked up and wailed loudly, "Woo woo woo, I'm not playing anymore." Adding it all up, she had actually invested a full 40 small divine rings. Of the 50 she had originally brought, now only the last 10 remained. Her dream of getting rich was completely shattered. Fang Chen didn't believe her few teardrops for a second and warned, Hey, be careful, the contract law might knock you down to the nascent soul realm." "Hurry up, keep throwing." Qiqi, wiping her tears, begged, "Brother, just let me off. Please voluntarily revoke the contract. Those 40 I've already put in. Consider them all a gift from your little sister, okay? Please, I'm even calling you brother." "Oh. So the client can actively revoke the contract." Fang Chen's gaze shifted and he murmured thoughtfully, "I can, but you can't expect me to revoke it for nothing, right?" Upon hearing this, Qiqi hurriedly returned the spirit, calming Buddha beads that hadn't even warmed up in her hands, and asked cautiously, "Now, is this enough?" Fang Chen didn't stretch out his hand to take it, but looked elsewhere and said slowly, "If only there were a sage crystal." This was clearly taking advantage of the fire to loot. Qiqi shook off her tears, trembling with rage, and furiously said, "You'd better know when to stop." Fang Chen glanced askance at the contract law above her head, chuckled, and said, "Aya, a rare commodity is worth hoarding for a high price. Right now, you're like a person about to die of thirst in the desert. And I just happen to have a bottle of water in my hand, so naturally, I can't sell it to you at the usual price." Qiqi went completely berserk. Fine. This bastard actually learned it on the spot and used it right away. Qiqi clenched her teeth tightly, struggling inwardly for a moment, and finally had to yield. She took out the sage crystal and fiercely threw it along with the spirit, calming Buddha beads, "Take them and disappear from my sight immediately." Fang Chen hurriedly reached out to catch them, but showed no intention of leaving at all. He didn't stop there, but instead muttered to himself, if only I could have another say, Gentry merit divine pearl, that would be even better. Huh. Qiqi's eyes suddenly widened. She looked Fang Chen up and down, as if getting to know him anew. No, how come you're even more black-hearted than me? Fang Chen's eyes drifted elsewhere, putting on an attitude of do whatever you want. Qiqi snorted coldly, forget about the say, Gentry merit divine pearl. I can use it myself to immediately break through to the sage realm. Then, this contract law won't be able to do anything to me. That was true, the words made sense. Fang Chen inwardly sighed, what a pity. Immediately after, his eyes flashed, and he added, then if only a supreme, grade spirit sword could fall from the sky, that would be even better. As long as he got one more supreme, grade spirit sword, he could cultivate the great perfection, level Diane sword array. Qiqi frowned, now that's more like it, but you're too late. That sword has already been reserved by someone. Choose something else, anything of supreme, grade spirit weapon level or below will do. Fang Chen lowered his head and pondered seriously for a while. There were simply too many things he wanted. Unfortunately, he had to quit while he was ahead now and not go too far. Otherwise, Qiqi could just waste that merit divine pearl, forcibly ignore the contract law, and then he would be drawing water with a bamboo basket, all for nothing. If it really came to that, not only would he be unable to continue extorting her, but even the sage crystal he had already obtained would probably be demanded back. After a moment's thought, he flipped his hand and took out the palm-sized 5-element magnetic mountain and asked, do you have the stones of this mountain? If there was anywhere in this world where one could find 5-element magnetic mountain stones, it would only be from Qiqi, who claimed to possess everything. This 5-element magnetic mountain was the first supreme, grade spirit weapon Fang Chen obtained, and also one of the most handy weapons he used. However, as the enemies he encountered grew stronger, its might gradually became somewhat inadequate. If he could reforge it once, that would be perfect. 5-element magnetic mountain. Qiqi recognized it at a glance, a hint of surprise appearing on her face. This is stone from the 5-element magnetic immortal mountain of the Northern Celestial Realm. It's extremely hard, a unique treasure material for artifact forging. I do have a bit, but not a lot. Fang Chen nodded secretly. If you said the 5-element magnetic mountain came from the Northern Celestial Realm, he would absolutely believe it. Because Qiqi had once given him a bucket of a mysterious 5-colored liquid specifically for bonding 5-element magnetic mountain stones. Upon learning that Qiqi only had a bit, Fang Chen's eyes couldn't help but show a look of disappointment. Just a bit, what use is that? However, what he absolutely didn't expect was, Qiqi simply waved her hand. With a loud boom, a giant 5-colored ore mountain a full 10 zhang tall crashed down heavily in front of him. Fang Chen's eyes instantly bulged wide. She calls this a bit? This was clearly more than 10 times larger than the 5-element magnetic mountain he currently had. Qiqi explained dismissively, the real 5-element magnetic immortal mountain towers into the clouds. This is merely a fragment that fell off it. If you want to refine your 5-element magnetic mountain into a quasi-realm artifact, or even a realm artifact, it's best to go to the 5-element magnetic immortal mountain in person. Fang Chen's eyes shone brightly as he listened. Then he rubbed his hands together and chuckled. Then, can you also give a bit of that 5-colored liquid to bind them? Upon hearing this, Qiqi glared at him fiercely. I might as well just give myself to you. That 5-colored liquid you mentioned is actually the blood of the angel race. Not worth much money at all, so I don't have any stored. If you want some, you can pre-order it.
What?
The smile on Fang Chen's face instantly stiffened. So that bucket of multicolored liquid Qiqi gave him back then was actually her essence blood. Fang Chen's throat felt as if blocked by something. Deep in his heart, a surge of indescribable and complex emotions suddenly surged forth. All right, you black-hearted little brat, cancel that contract for me right now. Qiqi fumed with rage, urging loudly. Fang Chen finally came back to his senses. With a somewhat heavy heart, he silently put away the 10 zhanked, all 5, magnetic origin mountain. Then he looked at the floating law of the contract and with a thought murmured, cancel the transaction. In an instant, the contract law that had enshrouded Qiqi dissipated like a light smoke and thin mist. Qiqi was finally freed. She glared at Fang Chen with her large, clearly black, and white eyes, viciously scowling, and gnashed her teeth as she cursed. I've been a black-hearted merchant all my life. Neve, I thought I'd be the one getting swindled by you today. 40 small divine rings, 1 sage crystal mold, and a 5 magnetic origin mountain. How could you even have the nerve to ask? Fang Chen's hand hidden in his sleeve had already secretly pressed on the primordial heaven, imprisoning good as he smiled calmly. Senior Qiqi, you wouldn't be thinking of going back on your word, would you? Qiqi's fists clenched tightly again and again. But after glancing at the sky a few times, worried that the master of this hunting ground might intervene, she ultimately had to give up. Qiqi bared her teeth and threatened angrily, "You'd better pray you never run into me when you're in desperate need. Otherwise, I'll definitely collect everything from you, principal and interest, and wring every last bit out of you." Fang Chen smiled and said nothing. The world is so vast, where would we ever meet again? Even if they did, he might not need anything from her in the future. Seeing Fang Chen's expression, impervious to reason, Qiqi was practically driven mad with fury. Just then a loud roar was heard. A deep, deafening roar suddenly exploded next to their ears. A massive white tiger, a full 20 zhang tall, had somehow silently crept up near the two of them. Now it suddenly lunged out, bringing a terrifying, biting hurricane that completely devastated the entire vast dense forest. However, the white tiger did not directly pounce on Fang Chen. It merely lifted its mouth and heavily dropped a huge, pale heap of innards in front of Fang Chen. Fang Chen couldn't help but freeze. He looked down carefully, only to realize that this heap of innards was actually a coiled chicken intestine. By the looks of it, it was probably the intestine from the stomach of some enormous, ferocious chicken-like beast. The white tiger's colossal body landed heavily in front of the mountain-like pile of intestines, with several glaring wounds on its face that had been gouged out by chicken claws, from which crimson droplets of blood were continuously seeping. It was clear that when it had killed those chicken-like ferocious beasts earlier, it had truly gone through an extraordinarily perilous fight. The white tiger glared fiercely at Fang Chen, raised a thick tiger paw, and heavily slapped the pile of pale intestines in front of it, making the whole heap quiver while a pungent, fishy stench abruptly swept out. Qiqi fanned the air in front of her with her hand, frowning deeply, and asked in confusion, "Why is it giving you chicken intestines?" Fang Chen looked at the incredibly thick chicken intestine, whose diameter was wider than his entire body, and his face immediately darkened. He explained grumpily, "Because I called it a petty chicken gut." Qiqi's expression suddenly froze, and then it dawned on her. The white tiger was sarcastically mocking Fang Chen, making him see just how big a chicken's gut really was. PFFD? She couldn't help but burst out laughing. The white tiger also glared fiercely at Qiqi sideways, its heavy paw slamming down on the chicken intestine once more, as if raging and demanding, "What are you laughing at?" But who would have thought that very heavy slap would cause a glob of yellowish, white matter to suddenly squirt out from the broken end of the intestine, splattering all over Qiqi and Fang Chen. Fang Chen was fine. He had been secretly guarding against the white tiger all along, so he dodged and ran away at the first moment. But Qiqi was caught off guard, and a soft, squishy glob of chicken feces landed squarely on her clean, beautiful shoes. Qiqi's smile instantly vanished, and her face quickly darkened until it seemed it could drip water. Already fuming with pent-up nameless rage from being swindled by Fang Chen and having nowhere to vent, she was now thoroughly enraged and practically ground her teeth as she cursed. You blind dead tiger. There was already someone who pre-ordered a demon whip from a great venerable of the heavenly 5 decays. Angrier as she spoke, her voice rose a few notches. I originally planned to randomly select a lucky fierce beast in this garden when I left and pluck an ownerless whip. Since you've come knocking on the door to die, I'll just pick you. The white tiger blinked its well-sized eyes rapidly, filled with innocence and confusion, thinking, "It's just a little chicken dung, why such a huge fuss?" For some reason, a strange sense of grievance rose in its heart, as if it were being made to take the blame for someone else. But as the king of all beasts, a notorious great fiend in this garden, the white tiger had its pride too. Pull out its dick. HMPH, mere junior of the human race, truly ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth. Amidst a heaven-shaking roar, the white tiger, its 4 paws treading on air, fiercely pounced. Human and tiger instantly transformed into 2 afterimages, fiercely clashing in midair, stirring up a fierce gale and rolling waves of air. After only a few short breaths. A shrill, distorted howl tore through the sky, and the white tiger's colossal body fell heavily into the distance with a miserable cry, splashing a trail of scalding crimson tiger blood along the way. On this side, Qiqi, her hands covered in blood, held a tiger whip that was even longer than her height, her little face cold as she said disdainfully, "In this world, is there a WHIP I can't pull off?" She swept her cold gaze around, intending to continue settling scores with Fang Chen, only to find that dog-like scoundrel had already slipped away without a trace the moment the white tiger first appeared. Qiqi stared hatefully into the distance, gritting her teeth. "You bastard, just you wait." She put away the tiger whip, carefully washed the blood from her hands, and looking at the only 10 small divine rings left in front of her, started calculating with a dark little face. She muttered to herself, "I originally planned to sell them for just 1 great Qian divine coin each, but now forced by circumstances, I have to raise the price 10 great Qian divine coins per ring." Then, as if comforting herself, she snorted, "Little fat lambs, don't blame me for being too black-hearted. Blame that guy Fang Chen for swindling me so badly. I can only recoup some of my losses from you." Boom! At the edge of the sky, a muffled boom was heard as the white tiger smashed heavily onto the ground, actually creating a deep crater in the hard earth. It lay weakly at the bottom of the pit. The top of its skull had been struck inward and dented, and there was a ghastly, bloody hole pierced straight through its back. Most pitiful of all, it had completely lost the fundamental source of joy as a mighty tiger. It gasped painfully, breathing out but not in, clearly on the verge of death. Both being at the heavenly 5 decays realm, Qiqi beating an opponent of the same level was as easy as flipping her palm. The white tiger's vision gradually blurred, and its mind involuntarily recalled the scenes of its life. It vaguely remembered that it had once been just a carefree little tiger until it met a smiling person who said they would take it to a good place. Thus, it had confusedly ended up in this primeval hunting ground full of fierce beasts, living day after day in the brutal cycle of hunting and being hunted. After barely surviving one life or death calamity after another, it had finally become the great fiend of the heavenly 5 decays it was today. But it had not lived happily, and still couldn't help but yearn for that distant past. It remembered itself running freely under the setting sun. That was its long, lost youth. At that moment, in its increasingly blurred vision, a young man floating in midair with a smile on his lips suddenly appeared. That smile on his face was just as hateful as the bastard who had tricked it into coming to this place back then. Tesk, 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 a bloody case truly sparked by a lump of chicken dung. Utterly brutal! Fang Chen shook his head while looking at the bloody hole in the white tiger's abdomen and couldn't help but break out in goosebumps. He dared not imagine how painful it must have been for the white tiger when that strike landed. Roar! The white tiger let out a weak, feeble roar, its voice full of resentment. This bastard had caused it to take the blame, reducing it to the little girl's venting toy, and now he even had the gall to come and mock it. The one who truly deserves to have that thing ripped off is this bastard. Fang Chen smiled slightly, taking out a heavenly raiment sacred water pill from his robe. He declared loudly, "Listen well, this is the supreme healing divine medicine from the central continent. Not only will it keep you alive, but it will also allow you to recover swiftly." Having said this, he deliberately paused, then added with emphasis, of course, "It can also restore your manly vigor." The white tiger glared at him weakly, its dim beastly eyes full of suspicion, not believing his words at all. Fang Chen rubbed his forehead and sighed helplessly. "Ah, truly simple of mind and strong of limb, with guts as narrow as a chicken's. At this point, what need do I have to deceive a tiger that's about to die? If I wanted to harm you, I could simply wait until you're dead and drag your corpse back to sell for money." The white tiger's bell-sized eyeball turned with difficulty. It thought, "That seems to make sense." It then weakly opened its mouth, though it could no longer speak. Its expression conveyed the meaning all too clearly. "You wouldn't just give it to me for free, would you?" Fang Chen said frankly, "Honestly speaking, I am actually a merchant of integrity. Now, I want to make a deal with you that is absolutely fair." Hearing this, the white tiger knew at once that there really was no free lunch in this world. Its cloudy gaze fixed on the heavenly raiment sacred water in Fang Chen's hand, then laboriously lifted a paw and pointed at itself, the meaning clear. "What do you want from me?" Fang Chen said bluntly, "In this primordial hunting grounds, I happen to lack a mount that can move freely. I see that your bones are uniquely distinct. You are a rare, peerless mount prodigy in this world." What a mount! The white tiger's eyes widened abruptly, feeling it had suffered an unprecedented humiliation. It mustered the last shreds of its strength, opened its tiger mouth, and let out a low but furious roar. The gist was clearly cursing. "You are the mount. Your whole family are mounts." Fang Chen, however, acted as if he didn't understand at all, and continued to coax persuasively. How about it? Would you consider being my mount for a while? Only, until this primordial hunt ends, I will return, and you will regain your freedom. Trading just a few short hours of being a mount for your life. This deal is truly a massive bargain for you. Honestly, you should count yourself lucky to have met a philanthropist like me. If you had encountered a black-hearted profiteer like Qiqi, I'm afraid not even your bone scraps would be left for you. This time the white tiger really took the words to heart, and began to seriously ponder in its mind. As a fierce creature that had fought its way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, it naturally understood better than anyone that only a living life was the most precious. Everything else was but passing clouds before the eyes. Moreover, once the primordial hunt ended, these outsiders would indeed all be teleported away, and by then, it would naturally regain its freedom. Having thought this far, it finally nodded its enormous tiger head heavily, then opened its mouth, adopting a posture of waiting for Fang Chen to feed it. Fang Chen, however, waved his hand and said, "Not so fast. Before giving it to you, I must first collect a strand of your soul." Once the white tiger's injuries healed, it would immediately recover its transcendent power of the 5 decays of heaven and man. If it then broke its word, Fang Chen would have no way to control it. The white tiger was naturally unwilling, but feeling the life force within its body growing weaker and weaker, it could only squeeze out a pained grunt from between its teeth. Gritting its teeth fiercely, it resolutely severed a strand of pure soul, letting it drift out of its body. Fang Chen, with quick eyes and swift hands, grabbed it at once, then infused it into a spectre crystal. This method was exactly the same as how the Black Sun King used a soul to control Lu Zhu. With this strand of soul in hand, he could at any time use soul power to curse and kill the white tiger's true body. Only when he held in his grasp sufficient means to control the other party did Fang Chen toss over that heavenly raiment sacred water pill. The white tiger swallowed the sacred water in one gulp, and the wounds all over its body immediately began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. While the tiger was healing, Fang Chen also closed his eyes, concentrating intently to sense his own domain. He had always been rather puzzled. Why was his domain like a bottomless pit? No matter how much he filled it, it never seemed full. However, under this concentrated perception, he was astonished to discover that every single one of the small divine rings that Qiqi had thrown over, without exception, was tightly adhered like magnets to his full moon divine ring. A full 40 of them, they just quietly clung there in their original place. Not a single one consumed. No wonder, no matter how many Qiqi threw, his domain showed no signs of replenishment. After all this fuss, it turned out that those small divine rings had not truly integrated into his divine ring at all. He reached out and grasped one of the small divine rings, taking quite a bit of effort to yank it off. This is strange. Why couldn't these small divine rings integrate into my divine ring? Fang Chen's eyes were filled with deep confusion. At the same time, a wave of worry surged in his heart. If they truly could not integrate, it would mean that his domain could not recover its crucial number of uses. He tried pressing a small divine ring firmly onto the surface of the ancestral Tao divine ring, but the result was still that it could not be integrated. Could it be that the laws of the flawless ancestral Tao are themselves too powerful, so much so that these mere laws don't even have the qualification to integrate? Fang Chen silently cursed in his heart. In desperation, he inwardly shouted at his divine ring, "Quickly, integrate into it." "You damn thing!" Who could have known that a miracle would occur the very next instant? Fang Chen felt a sudden emptiness in his hand as that small divine ring was absorbed right in. Not only that, but the remaining usable count of Fang Chen's domain was also directly filled at that moment, returning to the full quota of 10 times. Fang Chen was stunned for a moment. Then, after a while, he suddenly realized, so that's it. Could it be that the flawless ancestral Tao disdains this law power as too low level, and thus refused to actively let it integrate? Unless I, as its master, personally issue a forceful command. He let out a long sigh of relief, and his anxious heart finally settled. Now it was fine. He could finally use his domain without reservation to harvest those ancient blood demons to his heart's content. He secretly calculated in his heart that a single small divine ring could actually replenish the domain. By this calculation, there were still a full 39 remaining. Truly, they couldn't be used up, simply couldn't be used up. Having thought this far, his eyes suddenly darted about. These divine rings had some value only in the primordial hunting grounds. Once back in the central continent, they wouldn't be worth much. Since that's the case, why not take the opportunity to sell some off? If that profiteer Qiqi could do such business, why couldn't I, Fang Chen, do the same? As he was pondering, he heard a deafening rumble that shook the heavens and earth, and the ground began to tremble violently. It turned out to be the white tiger, whose injuries had already healed. Its mountain, like body 20 zhang tall, swayed as it rose to its feet again. The ferocious might of a great demon, at the 5 decays of heaven and man, level, surged out like monstrous waves in all directions. It lowered its eyes, casting a glance down at Fang Chen, a flash of undisguised arrogance flickering in its eyes, and raised its massive head high. But its thick tiger tail obediently stretched out in front of Fang Chen, signaling him to step on it and climb up. Seeing this, Fang Chen couldn't help but be amused. This beast actually had a bit of a tsundere personality. His figure blurred, and with a teleport, he arrived atop the white tiger's head, standing firmly on its crown, overlooking the vast, boundless primordial hunting grounds. A mount at the 5 decays of heaven and man level, plus an almost infinitely usable domain, this hidden ace was indeed formidable. Fang Chen's gaze gradually sharpened, and he said in a deep voice, "The 9 provinces have lost their deer. All heroes now vie for it. That truce monument, the central continent, is determined to claim it as well." As soon as his words fell, a low, mournful horn blast suddenly echoed across the entire hunting grounds. That desolate tone seemed to herald the arrival of some momentous event. The white tiger's entire body tensed, muscles taut. Its frame subconsciously lowered slightly, and deep wariness filled its tiger eyes. Fang Chen focused his mind on the distance, sensing that in the deepest part of the hunting grounds, an unimaginably vast and surging blood energy was churning wildly. That was the aura of the ancient blood demon. Countless ancient blood demons were on the move en masse. He listened to the lingering echoes of the horn and instantly understood its meaning. It was alerting all participants that an ancient blood demon tide had appeared. The most crucial moment of contention had finally arrived. At that moment, the white tiger extended its massive paw and began clumsily drawing on the ground. Fang Chen looked down. The scratches were extremely crude, but fortunately still barely recognizable. The first drawing was a lizard standing upright on its hind legs, and beside it the tiger had poked countless tiny dots with its claw. Fang Chen guessed, "You're saying there are a great many ancient blood demons over there." The white tiger nodded its large head emphatically, and even raised a paw to give him a thumbs up. A vein on Fang Chen's forehead twitched involuntarily, and he said with irritation, "I don't really want a simple-minded creature praising my intelligence." He then looked at the second drawing. It depicted a scythe-like object. Instead of numerous dots behind it, there was a chilling skull drawn. Fang Chen rubbed his chin and asked as if to himself, "Is there also a creature that wields a scythe? Could it be the 3rd type of ancient dark creature? Are they extremely dangerous?" The white tiger nodded repeatedly, its actions confirming Fang Chen's 3 consecutive guesses. A trace of curiosity rose in Fang Chen's heart. What exactly were the differences between this last type of ancient dark creature and the ancient giants and blood demons? Finally, he looked at the 3rd drawing. It was just a circle with a large X slashed inside it. Fang Chen furrowed his brow and asked, "Do you mean that area is a forbidden zone?" The white tiger nodded again, but this time the emotion revealed in its tiger eyes was no longer wariness. It was naked, unadulterated fear. Fang Chen's expression also grew solemn, and he said gravely, "No matter, as long as we don't set foot in that area. For now, we should immediately head towards the ancient blood demon tide." The white tiger nodded in response, and gave its entire body a violent shake. The black tiger's stripes on its body surged forth with waves of transparent ripples, spreading outward like ripples on water. In the blink of an eye, the white tiger vanished from sight, directly entering a state of invisibility. Fang Chen was momentarily stunned. If he hadn't controlled the other's soul and could clearly sense that it was right beneath his feet, he probably wouldn't have detected its presence at all. No wonder this old schemer could always flash out of the shadows to pounce on people. Earlier, it had crept near Qiqi, and Qiqi hadn't noticed at all. This invisibility ability was truly top-notch. Well, since the white tiger was invisible, he might as well go invisible too. Fang Chen immediately silently recited the selfless pure dust art, and his figure also vanished into thin air. Man and tiger, employing this elusive invisibility method, quickly made their way to the deepest part of the hunting grounds. An immense volcano, towering into the clouds, came into his distant view. Layer upon layer of crimson torrents were erupting from the volcano's mouth, flowing slowly down the mountainside towards the base. "Wait!" Fang Chen's pupils suddenly contracted. That was not lava at all. It was ancient blood demons. Herd after herd, an innumerable number of ancient blood demons packed together in dense, chaotic clusters. Their sheer numbers, pushing and surging against each other, truly made them appear like churning lava from afar. The powerhouses from various realms, scattered throughout the hunting grounds, were now being forced to converge around the volcano. Fang Chen roughly counted. The number had already dwindled from the original 80-odd people to just 60. The entire hunting ground was infested with ferocious creatures, 100 times more dangerous than the ancient blood demons, and they had driven all participants to this very spot. In other words, these 60 people before him were all that remained. In less than an hour, over 20 had already perished. Among them, some had undoubtedly been devoured by the fierce creatures, but it was likely that many had fallen at the hands of other realm powerhouses. Now, facing the surging ancient blood demon tide, those participants who had hoped to hide and survive until the hunt's end were forced to fight. The white tiger lightly scratched the charred earth with its claws a couple of times, then turned its head to cast an inquiring glance at Fang Chen. Fang Chen, however, shook his head and said calmly, "Not yet. My domain will have its greatest effect in the mid to late stages of this battlefield. For now, let's deal with the excess minor god rings in my possession." He had kept 10 for himself, which was more than enough to use liberally. The remaining 29 he might as well sell while he had the chance. As Zhang Yishen had said, this was one of the few opportunities to interact and exchange with various geniuses. Why not seize this excellent chance to trade for some valuable resources that he and the Central Earth needed? Fang Chen's gaze slowly swept across the entire field and quickly locked onto over a dozen figures who were strenuously slaying ancient blood demons. These people all harbored the ambition to compete for the first place. Naturally, they were the most eager for minor god rings that could replenish domains. Suddenly, he saw a vast expanse of holy light erupting from the front lines of the blood demon tide. A handsome youth with snow-white feathered wings abruptly unfurled his wings. In an instant, the countless feathers transformed into a torrential storm, pouring down upon the beast tide. Blood demon lords struck by the feathers dissolved on the spot, turning into holy light from the inside out and vanishing completely. Immediately after, he released feathers again. He performed this consecutively 3 times before his snow-white wings finally folded back. The 5 little angels hovering around his forehead also grew weary and listless. Clearly, what he had just used was some kind of power similar to the human domain, and it could only be activated 3 times. Yet the killing power it produced could only be described as unbelievable. Before him, a fan-shaped area with a radius of a full 1,000 zhang had been forcibly cleared into an empty void. In just a brief instant, a full 40 blood demon lords had evaporated on the spot. That was equivalent to an entire central tribe army of the heavenly realm. Although the blood demon lords were clustered together, allowing him to destroy so many with 3 strikes, the restraining effect of the angel clan's holy aura against ancient dark decay creatures was evident. It was truly domineering beyond compare. No wonder the northern heavenly realm could still stand unshaken for 10,000 years, even in its current fragmented state. Fang Chen's gaze flickered. This first trade target would be him, Yanwang Xiao. Fang Chen's mind stirred, and he steered the white tiger, rampantly knocking aside any ancient blood demons in their path, heading straight for Yanwang Xiao. At that moment, Yanwang Xiao was gripping a holy longsword forged from white bone. A casual swing easily decapitated an ancient blood demon before him. Against that bone sword, the tough body of a blood demon lord was as brittle and tender as tofu. But the bone sword was not like an angel's blade, which could make a blood demon lord explode with holy light from the inside out with just a touch. Sensing movement behind him, Yanwang Xiao spun around sharply. It seemed he could clearly sense who the person in invisibility before him was. His extremely sharp gaze instantly softened, and he smiled gently. "So it's you. It's good you're unharmed. Come, stay behind me. I'll protect you until the hunt ends." Fang Chen simultaneously revealed himself. He didn't get too close, deliberately maintaining a distance of 10 zhang, and said loudly, "This junior accidentally obtained a minor god ring and wonders if it might be of use to you, senior." As he spoke, he flipped his hand and produced a minor god ring. Yanwang Xiao raised his eyes to look, and an irrepressible glimmer of joy shone deep in his pupils. However, he quickly suppressed that emotion and said mildly, "This is a unique law of a special sage, capable of replenishing the domains of humans, the innate bloodlines of the Yura clan, and the sacred source of us angel clan. It can even replenish the origin of ancient dark creatures. You have picked up a treasure." He tried his utmost to restrain his inner desire, his tone appearing very composed. Fang Chen feigned complete ignorance and asked, "Is it that precious?" "Then I'll give it to you, senior." A ripple of emotion instantly flashed through Yan Wangxiao's eyes, but he suppressed it and asked, "How could that do?" Fang Chen took the opportunity to say, "Just as you said, senior, our three realms are closely linked and should help one another. I have no chance at first place, so this item is naturally useless to me. Giving it to you, senior, is the most appropriate thing. Just, this junior has a small request." Yan Wangxiao sighed with a sense of shame and said, "Very well, then I shall shamelessly accept it. If you need my help with anything, just say it straight." With this item, he would have 3 more opportunities to unleash his domain than Gongzi Xiang and Liu Baianhuang. That would be a tremendous advantage. No price would be too high for this. Fang Chen said unhurriedly, "A friend of mine named Wang Chengxiao, before I came here, asked me to seek some essence blood of the angel clan. Would it be convenient for you, senior?" Hearing this, Yan Wangxiao slightly furrowed his brows, his gaze fixed straight on Fang Chen, as if pondering something. Fang Chen couldn't help but feel a trace of puzzlement. Why would the other party hesitate over a mere bit of essence blood? He probed, "If it is too troublesome for you, senior." Upon hearing this, Yan Wangxiao let out a heavy sigh and decisively said, "Forget it. Since you need it, what harm is there in parting with a little?" Though he said that, he naturally wouldn't take his own essence blood. Instead, he casually plucked a feather gleaming with iridescent light from his wing and tossed it straight to Fang Chen. "A feather?" Fang Chen's heart skipped a beat. Could this be a spatial storage device? He grabbed the feather in his hand, extended his divine sense inside, and instantly a wondrous scene unfolded before his eyes. A small pool filled with multicolored liquid reflected in his sea of consciousness. It turned out that the feather contained a whole pond of Angel Clan essence blood. Yan Wangxiao explained in a calm tone, "This is the essence blood left behind after some heinous Angel Clan members were executed. Logic dictates that this item must never fall into the outside world, but you're not an outsider, so I'll simply give it to you." Fang Chen's heart swelled with wild joy. With so much Angel Clan essence blood, even the countless stones of the 5-magnet origin mountain could be bonded together. He immediately showed a grateful expression, tossed over the small divine ring, and loudly said, "Many thanks, senior." Yan Wangxiao caught it in one hand, and a hint of delight finally appeared on his face. However, his gaze flickered covertly over the storage device on Fang Chen's chest, and he asked with feigned nonchalance, "Where did you pick that up? Do you have more?" This question was within Fang Chen's expectations. He shook his head, his expression unchanged, and replied, "I saw that Senior called Qiqi accidentally drop it." "Oh, it was her. That explains it." Yan Wangxiao nodded with sudden understanding and did not suspect further. He only solemnly advised, "Then you must keep it a secret. Don't let anyone know. That woman is not to be trifled with." Fang Chen nodded repeatedly, why would I ever provoke her? He cupped his hands in salute and said, "This junior won't disturb the senior from slaying the enemy any longer. I take my leave first." With that, he turned and walked away. "Hold on!" Yan Wangxiao suddenly called him back, and with a smile warned, "The blood of the Angel Clan is harmful to the human clan. Remember, never touch it with your body." Fang Chen turned his head with a smile and said, "Thank you for the reminder, senior." However, the instant he turned back, his eyes suddenly narrowed. The Angel Clan's blood is harmful to us humans. If so, why has Ziyaj never warned me? Moreover, I have twice used Angel Clan blood to bond the 5-magnet origin mountain, and during that time I even touched it, yet I saw no abnormality whatsoever. Why would Yan Wangxiao lie to me? Why does he not want me to come into contact with the Angel Clan's blood? What exactly is he hiding? With this string of questions, Fang Chen hesitated no longer and directly executed the selfless purification art, vanishing from the spot in an instant. Yan Wangxiao still gazed in the direction Fang Chen had disappeared, his eyes profoundly meaningful. Yet, when his gaze swept over the vast expanse of air beneath Fang Chen's feet, a trace of wariness rose in his eyes. Although he could not see it, he could faintly sense the aura of a white tiger lurking there. After concealing himself, Fang Chen quickly locked onto another target. To be precise, it wasn't one person, but 3 Asura clan cultivators. 2 of them, clad in black robes, were manipulating a group of blood demon kings and a puppet of a 3-crown Asura king, charging fiercely at the front lines. Their methods, though not as devastating as Yan Wangxiao's single strike that could annihilate swaths of enemies, their exquisite puppetry arts allowed them to coordinate into a sharp group tactic, swarming forward, Almost no giant demon king could withstand even one of their coordinated moves. Thus, although they killed one beast after another, their overall speed was astonishingly fast. The numbers on the foreheads of those two Asura clan cultivators jumped at a blistering pace. Watching this from afar, Fang Chen's face showed an amused expression. Puppets, is it? In that case, when I encountered them before, that trap was truly set by them. Before me, many must have fallen into their scheme. He gave a cold snort and muttered to himself, people like that, if I don't ruthlessly cheat them, even the heavens will strike me with lightning. Tian Jian, while controlling the puppets to slay the Blood Demon Kings, kept a constant watch on the battle situation of Yanwang Xiao, Gongzi Xiang, and Liu Beinhuang. His brows slightly furrowed as he said in a deep voice, if this continues, we might not surpass them. Tian Qin was also watching the battle conditions of those three, her mood equally heavy. The strength of those three was truly incomparably tyrannical. Especially Gongzi Xiang, whose sage emperor body amidst the beast tide was like a monarch descending upon the world. Every time he drew his sword, the entire area fell silent. His battle record was truly peerless, leaving others far behind. Tian Qin sighed softly. It's that we control too few puppets, and they are too weak. Tian Jian swept a glance at that three, Crown Asura King, and several two-star Blood Demon Kings, his face full of disdain. When we encounter higher-ranked Blood Demon Kings, we'll kill all these useless things. What a waste of my puppetry talent. Tian Qin sighed helplessly. If we could use our talent a few more times and control more puppets, there would actually still be a chance to turn the tables. At that very moment, a chilling aura of the 5 decays of heaven and man surged violently from behind them. Their expressions drastically changed as they immediately turned around in alert. They saw the air before them distort, and a massive white tiger materialized, gazing down upon them with majestic authority. Just as they thought a ferocious beast had descended, a youthful voice came from the white tiger's forehead. Oh, fortunate ones, congratulations on encountering me. Tian Jian snorted coldly and said warily, stop these theatrics, show yourself and speak. Despite his words, his heart was extremely guarded. Anyone who could command a white tiger of the 5 decays of heaven and man, how could they be ordinary? The youthful voice said indifferently, you have no worth for me to reveal myself to. Tian Qin's beautiful eyes shifted, and she asked in a gentle voice, may I ask who you are, sir? Fang Chen looked at her through the void, and a flicker of surprise passed through his eyes. This woman, how does she bear such a striking resemblance to Tian Ji? His mind suddenly became crystal clear. The identities of these 2 Asura clan members were about to be revealed, the Celestial Dark Asura clan. They actually also possess primordial ancient tokens, and 2 at that. Fang Chen suppressed his doubts and said calmly, I am an apprentice of Qiqi, an honest merchant. I have in my hands exactly what you desperately need right now. Before the words had even faded, a divine ring detached from the void, slowly hovering and manifesting its true form. Tian Qin was immediately taken aback. The power of law to restore innate bloodline talent. This is indeed something only Qiqi could procure. Tian Jian was equally shocked. His gaze toward that void grew even more fearful, yet carried an unmistakable fervor. He asked urgently, how many divine rings do you have, sir? We'll take all of them. If the number of divine rings was sufficient, they could control puppets to kill enemies without limit, and then what would Gongzi Xiang amount to? How could Fang Chen let them seize all the advantage? He said indifferently, only 2, and these 2 are the only ones in the world. There is absolutely no third. If you want them, 5 great Qian divine coins each. How many? 5. Tian Jian and Tian Qin were instantly choked, speechless. Such divine rings normally had no demand at all. Even on this battlefield where supplies were extremely scarce, 1 great Qian divine coin was already a shocking high price. Let alone 5. Truly worthy of being Qiqi's apprentice, his heart was so black it must have been soaked in the same dye vat. Tian Qin could only smile bitterly and say, we really don't have that many great Qian divine coins. Fang Chen had long anticipated this point. Great Qian divine coins seemed to be extremely valuable. Even 1 coin wasn't something ordinary people could produce. He shifted the topic. Then it depends on whether you can bring out something that moves my heart. Seeing that there was still a turning point, Tian Qin quickly responded, we have. Without hesitation, she produced a black crystal and said, this item is. But her words stopped halfway, cut off abruptly. Because from Fang Chen's hand flew out a full 6 hell abyss crystals, as he said in an indifferent tone, don't bother bringing out worthless things. Tianqian watched in secret amazement, clicking her tongue inwardly. How precious were Hell Abyss crystals. Even the heavenly realm had only a few, yet this person casually produced 6. Tianjian also showed a look of shock. As expected of Qiqi's apprentice, he truly possessed every treasure. After pondering for a moment with extreme heartache, he produced a small hourglass. This is a consumable artifact imbued with the laws of time, called the space-time funnel. Once activated, time within a 30-foot radius can be accelerated tenfold, the effect lasting for 1 hour. However, after a single use, it will be rendered useless. The implication was that while 1 hour passed outside, 10 hours would pass within the hourglass's range, nearly an entire day. At first glance, it seemed of little use. But in an emergency where time was desperately needed, this item could play a heaven-defying role. Fang Chen instantly grasped its wondrous use and nodded. Not bad, but still not worth 1 lesser divine ring. Tianjian's face darkened. Sir, you should know when to stop. Under normal circumstances, I would never bring this out. It's only because the divine ring in your hand is something I urgently need that I am showing my sincerity. Fang Chen remained calm. Master Qiqi has repeatedly taught me, better to lose a deal than to sell any item cheaply. After all, there are only these 2 lesser divine rings in the world. Since you don't want them, I'll find the next lucky one. Hearing this, Tianjian's expression immediately changed. If the 2 divine rings were sold to others, then others would hold all the advantages. If they fell into young Master Xiang's hands, their hopes of vying for first place would be completely dashed. After an inner struggle for a moment, he gritted his teeth fiercely and said, Wait, I actually have 2 space-time hourglasses. Tianjian felt a heart-piercing pain. These were gifts from the clan's emperor before he came, repeatedly urged to use them well, originally intended to save his life in the next trial. Now he had no choice but to trade them for resources. However, the lesser divine rings were also unique in the world, equally rare. This deal wasn't too great a loss for him. Fang Chen was overjoyed, secretly thinking delightedly, See, treasures are truly like water in a sponge. If you squeeze, there's always more. But he didn't stop. Instead, he showed a troubled expression and sighed heavily. Still a bit lacking. If we close the deal like this, Master Qiqi will surely scold me. Tianjian felt his teeth itching, grinding them with a gritty sound, cursing inwardly. This fellow is way too greedy. Seeing this, Tianqian quickly tugged at the about-to-erupt Tianjian, her graceful eyes shifting to the 3. Crown Asura King behind her, and slowly said, How about this? We'll teach our... Oh, in a puppet of the 3, Crown Asura King as a bonus. What do you think, sir? Her tone was soft, yet every word clear. Not only is her strength formidable, but her appearance is also extremely beautiful. She can grace the battlefield, and even more so the bedchamber. Taken back to your Sin realm, she will surely be a huge hit. Oh? Fang Chen had actually noticed that 3, Crown Asura King long ago. A puppet of such grade, where could he catch one in normal times? If brought back to the central plains, she could be used to slay ancient giants and later guard the heavenly secrets pavilion. Plus those 2 space-time hourglasses, this deal was an absolute blood-earning profit. Yet on his face, he still wore a troubled look and sighed, Fine, for the sake of your beauty and sweet voice, miss, I'll take a loss this time. Fang Chen declared loudly, Deal established, take it. Without waiting for the words to finish, he flung his hand, tossing the lesser divine ring down. Tianjian, with a dark face, threw over the 2 space-time hourglasses. Tianqian, her face full of joy, pointed her finger abruptly at the 3, round Asura King's forehead. A black token, imbued with her soul mark, slowly coalesced into form from the void. She threw the 3, Crown Asura King, together with the token to Fang Chen, instructing, with this token, you can command her at will. Fang Chen caught the incoming items, a surge of satisfaction rising in his heart. What a tremendous enhancement this day had brought. Tianjian tightly clutched the lesser divine ring, unable to restrain a trace of joy on his face. But when he glanced at the other lesser divine ring in Fang Chen's hand, deep regret appeared in his eyes. He still had some powerful items, but those were trump cards for saving his life. It would be too irrational to trade them all for lesser divine rings. Yet if he didn't buy it, wouldn't he be letting others profit in vain? Especially not that strongest young Master Xiang. His gaze shifted, and he deliberately hinted, Sir, why not trade that last divine ring with that Liubian Huang? The ancient demon realm has paid a colossal price to secure this primeval hunt. They have not only invited the Chaos Ancient Blood Marquis from the Sin realm to seize the primeval tokens and kill competitors, but also specially prepared many precious treasures. That Liu and Huang would certainly be extremely willing to trade with you.
Oh!
Upon hearing this, Fang Chen immediately recalled that during his tribulation, it was precisely that Chaos Ancient Blood Marquis who tore through the world barrier, crossing realms, to assassinate him and seize his primeval token. So it turned out that the ancient demon realm had been behind all this. He still vividly remembered that behind the Chaos Ancient Blood, Marquis's warhorse hung a long string of bloody heads, each head clamped in its mouth a primeval token. And back then, he had almost met the same fate as those heads. Even more disheartening, there still lingered a pursuit mark from the Chaos Ancient Blood Marquis on his body. That damn Liu Huang. However, this explained why the Heavenly Realms Asura clan had 2 primeval tokens, and why so many participants had mysteriously disappeared. So it turned out that primeval tokens could be purchased from the Sin Realm. Fang Chen raised his eyes to look at Tianjian, whose gaze was full of scheming, and said indifferently, "Very well, I will go find Liu Huang now." With that, he turned and left. Watching his departing figure, Tianjian snorted coldly, that black-hearted bastard. Tianqin, however, gently shook her head and said, "He is merely Qiqi's apprentice, acting on orders. The truly black-hearted one is that Qiqi. He himself is rather reasonable." Tianjian cast her a sidelong glance and teased, "That kid merely complimented your beauty and sweet voice, and you're already speaking up for him." Tianqin smiled faintly and said, "In any case, I feel that he was originally a kind person, only forced by that Qiqi into such a black-hearted state." Meanwhile, Fang Chen left that place, sitting steadily on the tiger's back, carefully tallying up his gains. He carefully stored the 2 space-time hourglasses, placing them separately in a spatial storage device. As for the puppet of the 3, Crown Asura King, he hid the token in his bosom and gave the puppet a cursory one, Sova. The puppet was enveloped in a thick layer of black mist, completely obscuring her true appearance. One could only vaguely sense that her consciousness was being ruthlessly suppressed, by the puppet art, like a lifeless marionette. Fang Chen didn't need her to kill enemies at the moment, so he simply placed her on the tiger's back and continued searching for the next batch of little fat lambs. Of course, he would absolutely not actually go trade with that Liu Huang. Their enmity was already deep. The moment they met, the other would inevitably cry out for blood, bringing endless trouble. Moreover, Fang Chen couldn't let the lesser divine ring benefit him. As for that young Master Zhang, he similarly wouldn't seek him out. With that fellow's aura of ruling the world, Fang Chen could almost imagine that if he went to trade with the lesser divine ring, the other would likely look down on everything and fling a sentence, "You know nothing of me." Then draw his sword and strike, spattering his face with nose blood. This job of showing off in front of the strong from all realms, he, Fang Chen, would do it himself. The moment those ancient blood demons were gravely wounded would be the perfect time for Fang Chen to make his entrance. Then, if he didn't act, nothing, but once he did, he would shock everyone present. While calculating, he continued to scout for new fat lambs. "Lucky people, congratulations on meeting me. Young lad, would you like to make a heaven-defying, fate-changing deal? Qiqi's apprentice here, would any of you like to trade?" Not long after, Qiqi made her way from one end of the battlefield to the other, hawking her wares all along the way. She felt bewildered. How strange, why has no one been willing to buy all along the way? Some even glared at her with anger and hostility. It was truly baffling. She hadn't swindled them out of a single great Kayan divine coin, so where was this deep resentment coming from? Just as she was wondering, she spotted Tianjian and Tianqin at a glance. Qiqi hastily plastered on her sweet, syrupy smile and approached them, saying, "Hello, elder brother and elder sister. I am your favorite Qiqi. I have divine rings that can restore domains. Might the 2 of you be interested?" Tianjian and Tianqin exchanged a glance, and both faces showed shock. Tianjian immediately felt a sense of being terribly deceived and said angrily, "Didn't you say there were only 2? How come there's more?" The reason he had been willing to throw down 2-time space hourglasses back then was precisely because he believed the nonsense that there were only 2 in the world. Now it turns out, not only is there a 3rd, but there are probably even more. Clearly, they had been thoroughly duped by Qiqi and her black-hearted disciple. "Huh." Qiqi blinked her large, watery eyes and said with a face full of confusion, "I haven't made any deals with you." "Why are you saying this?" Tianjian was so infuriated he laughed. He raised his hand and took out that yet to be used little divine ring, snorting coldly, "Then open your eyes and see, what is this?" "Huh." Qiqi's pupils suddenly dilated, and she said in astonishment, "Where did you get this?" Tianjian said with a dark expression, "Where else? Who else but your black-hearted disciple? He lied to me that only these two existed in the world, so I spared no expense to buy them, but as soon as he left, you, his master, came right after to continue the swindle." "Disciple?" Qiqi opened her little mouth slightly and stammered, I have no disciple, and when did I ever say there were only 2 divine rings?" Tianqian's beautiful face was also covered with coldness as she said, "Senior Qiqi, is it interesting to cover it up like this? It was under your coercion that your disciple had no choice but to sell the little divine ring at such an astronomical price. Do you think a simple, I have no disciple, can deny everything?" Qiqi's mouth opened and closed. She wanted to retort loudly, but the little divine ring in Tianjian's hand could indeed only have come from her. After hemming and hawing for a while, Qiqi suddenly demanded, "What exactly does this disciple of mine look like?" Tianjian snorted. He dared not show his true face. He stayed invisible the whole time, and beside him followed a ferocious creature in the 5 decays of heaven and man. He sounded young, probably a youth. Qiqi immediately counted on her fingers, one by one. "Invisibility, Fang Chen can do it." A fierce creature of the 5 decays of heaven and man, isn't that the white tiger she had beaten to a half-dead state? Fang Chen was right beside them at the time. A youth, Fang Chen fits that perfectly. Has divine rings, Fang Chen still fits that. And dares to impersonate her disciple. This is clearly something Fang Chen would do. Black-heartedly swindling an astronomical price. This is even more the kind of deed Fang Chen would commit. In summary, it's Fang Chen. Qiqi was so infuriated that she actually laughed. No wonder, as I hawked my wares all along the way, not a single person wanted my divine rings. It turns out Fang Chen had already completed all the business. No wonder others glared at me with angry eyes. It turns out Fang Chen had already squeezed their guts nearly dry. As she laughed, her whole body began to tremble uncontrollably. "You little bastard. It was barely tolerable that you did your own business, leaving me with none to do. But you actually dared to impersonate my disciple. You took all the benefits, yet made me shoulder the infamy." The more she thought about it, the angrier she got, so furious that her vision kept going dark, and she staggered repeatedly in midair. Fang Chen of the Central Plains." Qiqi suddenly threw her head back and screamed piercingly toward the sky, completely descending into a frenzy. "Get out here. Come out." At the other end of the battlefield, Fang Chen had just finished trading his 28th little divine ring, a satisfied smile appearing on his face. "Today's business has been truly fantastic. This day truly brought enormous gains." He had exchanged for countless resources from various realms, secret treasures that could help nascent soul cultivators break through, great medicines to boost nascent soul cultivators. Dion and even obtained a precious treasure not found in the Central Plains, one that could help late nascent soul warriors perfect their Tao, greatly increasing their chances of awakening. In addition, he even obtained the recipe for a 7th grade great pill. That's right, it was precisely the rare pill formula that could forcibly push a divine transformation cultivator from the 1st decay to the 2nd decay. Not only that, Fang Chen also incidentally acquired many rare medicinal ingredients needed to refine this pill. As long as he could stably refine the 7th grade great pill, he could mass produce it. For the Central Plains, which had just experienced a brutal war and was left devastated, these precious resources were like a timely rain, enough to quickly revitalize this land. Fang Chen's heart surged with emotion, and he couldn't help but sigh lowly. These little divine rings are truly gifts from the heavens. Thank the heavens! Thank the heavens! Fang Chen! A faint, almost imperceptible, yet extremely shrill scream pierced through from the far depths of the battlefield, but was quickly drowned out again by the deafening clamor of the battle. Fang Chen's brow tightened. He suddenly raised his head and listened for a moment, then slightly frowned and muttered to himself, "Was that a hallucination? Or is someone thinking of me?" He shook his head gently, deciding not to dwell on it, then straightened up and looked deeply into that vast, boundless crimson battlefield. After this period of frenzied fierce battle, the beast tide formed by the ancient blood demons had long been locked in a deadly entanglement with the 60 powerhouses from various realms. Many of the massive blood demon kings were already wounded and covered in scars. At that moment, Fang Chen's gaze was abruptly and firmly drawn to a distant part of the battlefield. He saw dozens of ferocious blood demon kings madly chasing a figure sprinting across the wilderness, and that person was none other than Jiang Yishan. This Zhang Yishan had not fallen into difficulty due to the beast tide's eruption. On the contrary, he seemed more and more in his element amidst the chaos of the battlefield. Because the density of the beast tide was simply too great. Often, he only needed to scatter a handful of deadly poison to bring down a large swath of blood demon kings. Once those blood demon kings had mostly collapsed to the ground, he would swiftly turn back, blade rising and falling, cleanly delivering the finishing blow. So much so that with only a cultivation at the second decay of heaven and man, the number on the king's crown atop his head, symbolizing his battle achievements, had reached an alarming 150. Fang Chen had walked the battlefield for so long, and hardly saw anyone whose achievement count surpassed his. Moreover, Fang Chen keenly noticed that when Zhang Yishan's kill count reached 100, a faint white pillar of light, 15 zhang high, rose from the crown on his head. Even from a great distance, one could faintly see that light pillar. Looking again in the direction of Tianjian, Liu Baianhuang, Yan Wangxiao, and Gongzi Xiang in the distance, 4 sky-piercing light pillars were each taller and more dazzling than the last. This undoubtedly heralded that their achievements were each more formidable and terrifying than the last. Among them, the most earth-shattering achievement was Gongzi Xiang's. The white light pillar above his head was a full 100 zhang high, emitting a dazzling, brilliant incandescent radiance that made one dare not look directly at it. And closely behind him was Yan Wangxiao. Her light pillar, although manifesting substantively, was barely 30 zhang high. Gongzi Xiang could be said to be peerless and far ahead. In that chaotic battlefield, he was like a walking pillar of light reaching to the heavens. Wherever he passed, blood demon kings fell dead or wounded in droves, with no one able to stop him. And that 100 zhang light pillar above his head was also swelling wildly, at a terrifying speed visible to the naked eye. Fang Chen subconsciously glanced at the pitiful number above his own head, for, instead of feeling discouraged, a long, lost, surging battle intent suddenly surged within his heart. This desire to compete with powerhouses, the last time it appeared was when he was in the 9 sects of the continent, contesting with the top experts of his era. After leaving the 9 sects, he rarely encountered rivals among his peers. Now, witnessing one after another of the various realms' heaven, gifted geniuses of similar age roaming the battlefield and shining brilliantly, an immense heroic spirit surged within him. He suddenly looked toward the dense mass of blood demon kings gathered near Zhang Yishan, his gaze turning extraordinarily sharp, and he let out a clear, long laugh, saying, "It is time for our central plains to strike." At this very moment, in the deepest part of that blood-red celestial canopy, within a majestic palace suspended in the void, set into the ground was an immense square crystal, within which the entirety of the primordial hunting grounds was clearly reflected. Within the hunting grounds, scattered among the dense red tide, were dozens of faint white specks of light. Each white speck was clearly marked with the origin and designation of its owner, the surviving contestants. The vast red tide, naturally, was the surging horde of ancient blood demon kings. Among them, a few white specks projected conspicuous pillars of light into the sky without a doubt. Those were young Master Xiang and his companions. A middle-aged man with a faint, elusive smile at the corner of his mouth, slightly disheveled hair, and a somewhat unkempt beard, lounged lazily against the throne at the highest point of the great hall. On both sides of the hall stood rows of spirit transformation stage powerhouses, too intimidated to even breathe loudly. Their cultivation levels varied, but they all shared one common characteristic. That was, each of them had once overseen the Linlang hunt of a certain world. Among them, Ling Zuzi, who had presided over the Linlang hunt of the Taking Grand Domain, was prominently present. However, his current condition was even more dire than before. Previously, Ling Zuzi's divine halo had already dimmed, his body decaying and reeking, clearly in the tragic state of the heavenly man's decline tribulation. Now, his decline had worsened even further. His body constantly oozed foul, smelling pus, his life force weak and faint, the whole person like a flickering candle in the wind. His eyes were fixed intently on the crystal projection, on the speck of light labeled Zhongtu Fang Chen, his murky eyes filled with earnest anticipation. Standing beside him was a female venerable who exuded the aura of the third decline of the heavenly man. Her divine halo shone brightly, and her body naturally carried a faint, subtle fragrance. She glanced at the haggard Ling Zuzi beside her, and slightly furrowed her brows. "Old Ling, could it be that you didn't tell him back then that the outcome of this primordial hunt is also directly tied to your own life? Only if the Zhongtu side he represents wins will you, as the one who presided over the Zhongtu Linlang hunt, receive the bestowed grace from the upper realms, allowing you to brioche through this tormenting heavenly man's decline tribulation." Ling Zuzi shook his head with a smile and said hoarsely, Compared to the life and death survival of Zhongtu, what is my insignificant life worth? The woman looked toward the white speck, representing Fang Chen, gazing at the lonely foreword marked on it, and couldn't help shaking her head with a sigh. But given the current battle situation, no matter what, he cannot carry the hopes of your Zhongtu. This ancient blood demon tide will end in just the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. No matter how divinely capable he is, he has no power to reverse the tide now. Ling Xuzi still wore a smile and said calmly, as long as he survives to the end and allows the great catastrophe befalling Zhongtu to end smoothly, that will be enough. Since Zhongtu recommended him, they must have great confidence in his ability to survive to the end. The woman frowned tightly and asked in bewilderment, your Zhongtu is, after all, a world that once obtained the Tablet of Truce, a unique existence among the myriad realms. This time, do you truly have so little fighting spirit? Her tone still brimmed with pity for the soon-to-perish Ling Xuzi. Ling Xuzi chuckled hoarsely and sighed. That time 3,000 years ago, Zhongtu paid an earth-shattering, colossal price to finally attain it. The current Zhongtu is already riddled with countless wounds. How could it possibly afford such a price again? Upon hearing this, the woman could only let out a soft sigh. Ah, if he could only hand this primordial token to the young emperor of your Zhongtu realm, perhaps there would truly be hope. The young emperor is a direct descendant of a three calamities sage realm lineage, with transcendent strength, enough to compete with peerless prodigies like Yanwang Xiao and Liu Bianhuang. If he could come, although I dare not say he would surely take first place, his early performance would certainly be far stronger than Fang Chen's. In any case, he wouldn't have only hunted a pitiful 4 so far. How did it become 14? As the woman was musing, her gaze inadvertently swept over the white speck, representing Fang Chen again, only to discover to her shock that the number 4 had somehow quietly changed to 14. Ling Xuzi was also suddenly stunned, hurriedly widened his eyes and looked over, his face aghast. This, in the span of our few words, he has slain 10 blood demon kings in one breath. The woman's face was also full of doubt, and she speculated he must have used some sort of one-time, formidable law power. Ah, how reckless, to use up his life, saving law power now. How will he protect himself in the next stage? Just at that moment, the number above Fang Chen's head jumped again. From 14, it abruptly leaped to 24. Then, the number began to jump continuously and frantically at a breath, stopping frequency. 30, 46, 60. The woman's eyes instantly widened, and she cried out involuntarily, what in the realm is he doing? Did he bring a whole body's worth of law scrolls to this primordial hunting ground? Shouldn't your Zhongtu sages be busy dealing with the catastrophe right now? How could they have the energy to spare so many law powers for him to squander? However, what truly petrified her on the spot was that the jumping of Fang Chen's number showed absolutely no sign of stopping. With each jump, it increased by at least 8, and sometimes directly skyrocketed by 10 or 20. Ling Xuzi's withered face was also filled with shock, and he murmured, this speed, not even young Master Xiang was this fast. WH, what exactly is going on? At this moment, the slovenly middle-aged man who had been leaning on the throne all along seemed to direct his gaze straight past the crystal and directly onto Fang Chen on the ground, clearly seeing everything that was happening to him. His originally cynically nonchalant expression changed abruptly as he suddenly sat up straight, his body subconsciously leaning forward slightly, and a look of unprecedented gravity appeared in those murky eyes. Am I seeing correctly on this brat? It's actually this long, lost Dao. If those few prehistoric old saints still alive in the divine capital were to learn of this, they would likely be unable to sit still on the spot. At this moment, on that blood-shrouded wasteland, Jiang Yishan was staring slack. Jawed at the ancient blood demon kings he had laboriously poisoned and weakened with venom. He watched them, one after another, burst apart out of nowhere without warning, like crisp watermelons run over by a wagon wheel, splattering stinking flesh and blood all over the ground. His entire person was rooted to the spot like a clay or wooden statue. Only after a moment did he gulp with difficulty, and with a horrified expression, This is domain power. No, this is too overbearing. As long as there's even the slightest injury, it can use that as a catalyst to instantly detonate the entire body. Immediately after, he suddenly came to his senses, abruptly turned his head, looking at the seemingly empty void, and cursed in a fit of rage, jumping in fury, Bastard! Kill them yourself. Why come and snatch my spoils of war? The void rippled slightly, and Fang Chen slowly revealed his figure. He looked at the hopping, mad Jiang Yishan, a feigned look of surprise on his face, and said, Ayo, I thought Brother Jiang had once again been chased by an ancient blood demon king, so I specially lent a hand to help. So it turns out, I misunderstood the situation, and caused a misunderstanding. It's you. As soon as Jiang Yishan heard that voice, he immediately recognized it. It was that invisible person who had swindled his toxic origin true scripture back then. What shocked him even more was that the aura emanating from this person was merely that of the first decline of the heavenly man. Although he didn't know what method he used to conceal his divine halo, the unmistakable aura of his cultivation level was definitely the first decline of the heavenly man. He had always assumed that Fang Chen was at least at the second decline, or even the third decline, a terrifying existence. Fang Chen smiled slightly and said unhurriedly, "That's right, it is I. I wonder how Brother Jiang's recent cultivation of my selfless pure dust art has been progressing." Presumably, with Brother Jiang's talent, there must be great improvement. Jiang Yishan felt a twinge of guilt upon hearing this, but looking at Fang Chen's face, which was as young as his own, how could he so easily lose face? He quickly puffed out his chest and put on a brave front. "Of course. It's just a mere invisibility art. What's so difficult about it? And you, how is your cultivation of that true scripture of poison origin of mine coming along?" Jiang Yishan's lips curled into a slight smile, and he pondered to himself with a hint of mockery. If Fang Chen had truly attempted to concoct poisons, he would have already plunged headfirst into the deadly trap he meticulously laid. But contrary to expectations, Fang Chen not only didn't change color, but instead cupped his fists with a grateful expression. "Brother Jiang, such righteous generosity. To bestow such an unparalleled poison scripture, I, Fang Chen, on behalf of myself and the Central Plains, am deeply grateful." Jiang Yishan's brows suddenly furrowed, and doubts involuntarily rose in his heart. Could it be that this brat hasn't discovered the trap at all? At this thought, a flash of disappointment quickly flickered through his eyes. He had been eagerly looking forward to watching Fang Chen's furious and desperate expression. Jiang Yishan smiled meaningfully and said slowly, "After you have finished studying this scripture, you will naturally come to thank me again." With a sweep of his large sleeve, he turned and walked away, coldly tossing out 2 words, "Farewell." Fang Chen, however, extended a hand and called out to him in a clear voice. Not intending to waste time here, he immediately flipped his palm, revealing a delicate small divine ring, and said with a smile, "Wait. I happen to pick up a treasure that can replenish domains. I'd like to exchange it with Brother Jiang for some materials from the myriad poison realm." Jiang Yishan's pupils suddenly constricted. He instantly recognized what that divine ring was, and even his breathing grew heated. He abruptly turned around and blurted out excitedly, "All right, what materials do you want?" He had already calculated it clearly in his heart. With this divine ring to recover his domain, he could immediately concoct another batch of 5 Venom's extreme poison. The 2 sides immediately began haggling back and forth on the spot. In just a short while, more than a dozen storage vessels appeared in Fang Chen's arms, stuffing the front of his clothing to bursting. Meanwhile, the storage artifacts hanging all over Jiang Yishan's body had been reduced by more than half. Clutching the divine ring tightly in one hand, he pointed at Fang Chen's departing figure with the other and hopped about cursing furiously, "That damned black-hearted dog. One lousy law actually cheated me out of most of my materials. Why doesn't heaven strike him dead with a bolt of lightning? Just you wait, see me seize first place with this little divine ring, and you'll regret it." After Fang Chen departed, he headed straight for the next dense gathering of ancient blood demon kings. Without a word, he raised his hand and unleashed a flawless domain. Invisible ripples instantly radiated outward in all directions. Whenever covered by the domain, those injured ones, Starblood Demon Kings couldn't even let out a miserable howl before exploding on the spot. As for those severely wounded Starblood Demon Kings still struggling, Fang Chen coldly sent the 3 round Asura King puppet forward to cleanly finish them off one by one. "You're courting death, not far away, a powerhouse at the 4 declines of heaven." Man Stage, who was hunting fiercely, immediately roared in fury. Fang Chen didn't even lift an eyelid. He simply summoned the White Tiger as well. Now was the critical final moment where every second counted. There was no need to hide anything. A colossal tiger body, 20 zhang long, materialized out of thin air, an overwhelming, baleful energy swept out like a storm. The powerhouse's expression instantly changed drastically. His furious look vanished completely in an instant, becoming extremely polite and civilized. He immediately cupped his hands, a warm smile piling up on his face, and said gently, "Our meeting here is truly fate. I'll leave this place to you. I'll find another spot. Farewell, farewell." With the white tiger at his side, it indeed saved a lot of trouble. Fang Chen swept a faint glance over the scattered blood demon kings around. Not bothering with them at all, he retracted his puppet and once again sped off. Thus Fang Chen slaughtered in all directions up ahead, while the white tiger advocated civilization from behind. Wherever they passed, only a few sporadic curses had time to ring out before it immediately became peaceful and harmonious in the next moment. Before long, Fang Chen had exhausted his domain 10 times in one breath. The number on the crown atop his head steadily rushed to 100, as expected. An illusory white beam of light 10 zhang thick suddenly shot up from him into the sky. But this was far from enough. He flipped his hand and took out a small divine ring to absorb directly, and the previously depleted domain uses were instantly refilled on the spot. Without pausing, he once again initiated a merciless slaughter. Half a cup of tea's time passed in a flash. Ling Zuzi stroked his graying beard, a smile he couldn't suppress already piling up on his face, as he repeatedly praised aloud. Over 400. This achievement was second only to young Masters Yang, Yanwang, Xiao, Liu Baianhuang, and the Heavenly Sword siblings. The Central Plains actually managed to fight its way into 5th place by its own strength, truly a great honor. The spirit transformation stage, experts on both sides, at this moment, all gazed with complicated expressions at the point of light representing Fang Chen. In just half a cup of tea's time, he had made such astonishing gains. The Central Plains truly is the most deeply hidden world. Having remained still for 10,000 years, once it moves, it shakes all realms. Could it be that this time the Central Plains will once again seize the top position? But an old man at the 5 declines of heaven, man's stage, slowly shook his head. It's difficult. The number of blood demon kings has already started to thin out. In the remaining half cup of tea's time, it would be very hard for him to hunt more than 400 more. More crucially, by the timing, it should be about time for them to start plundering each other's achievements. Otherwise, who could possibly surpass the peerless young Master Xiang, who has left everyone far behind? The crowd's eyes couldn't help but look towards young Master Xiang's direction and saw a dazzling pillar of light 140 zhang tall, so catching it, made hearts tremble. Yanwang Xiao, second only to him, had a light pillar merely 70 zhang. The Heavenly Sword siblings barely reached 60 zhang. Liu Baianhuang, 50 zhang. Fang Chen's light pillar had also risen to over 40 zhang by now. Zhong Yishen's light pillar was about 20 zhang. For the rest, unless they plundered each other, it was simply impossible to surpass young Master Xiang. On the battlefield, Fang Chen stood with hands clasped behind his back on the white tiger's forehead, overlooking the vast hunting grounds, but no longer in a hurry to act. Rebel, looking at those several beams of light in the distance even longer than Fang Chen's, couldn't help but urge anxiously, "Big brother, why did you suddenly stop?" Fang Chen, hands behind his back, gazed deeply at the surroundings and slowly said, "Haven't you noticed? Aside from young Master Xiang, those ranked near the top have all gradually stopped hunting." Rebel was taken aback, then carefully scrutinized those light pillars. Sure enough, apart from the pillar representing young Master Xiang, which was still continuously rising, the remaining few had somehow completely stopped growing some time ago. Stopping growth meant they were not hunting at all. Rebel scratched his head, even more puzzled. What's wrong with them? Seeing they can't catch up, are they preparing to give up on competing for first place? Fang Chen's gaze suddenly sharpened, and he said in a deep voice, "They are all top tier spirit transformation prodigies from various realms, each looking down arrogantly on their generation. How could they easily admit defeat and yield? There is only one reason for stopping. They are well aware that hunting through ordinary means will never catch up to young Master Xiang, so they are going to conduct a special hunt." Rebel's eyes rolled around, scanning back and forth over those long beams several times, then suddenly gasped and asked in shock and doubt, could it be that contestants can hunt each other to seize each other's achievements? Fang Chen nodded slightly, his tone certain. In the archaic hunt, everything can be hunted. The mutual hunting among contestants is probably the true essence of this hunt. He raised a hand and touched the crown on his own head. Ever since the light pillar appeared, the crown had gradually become loose, as if it could be taken off at any time. This undoubtedly meant that if someone killed him, they could directly seize the crown and all achievements recorded on it. Or, if he admitted defeat, he could also voluntarily remove the crown and offer it up, begging to be spared his life. All this indirectly confirmed his conjecture. Rebel stroked his chin, his expression becoming cautious, and said quietly, "Big brother, then let's stop hunting too. A tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind, If your light beam surpasses theirs, we will inevitably become the fattest prey in their eyes. If it were Fang Qian's past temperament, he might truly choose to temporarily avoid the sharp edge and act cautiously. But today, he meant to compete on the same stage with the arrogant prodigies of all realms, to openly and righteously suppress the strong foes from various realms, and seize that first place for the central plains. Fang Qian's eyes shot out a sharp, piercing light as he declared with absolute finality, "Let them tear each other apart. We press on with the hunt. If they truly dare come for me, I'll shatter them cleanly and decisively. Move out." The defiant youth first felt a flicker of shock, then a surge of hot blood rushed to his head. He hadn't seen the little vampire so seriously determined to compete with his peers in a long time. He immediately thrust out his chest and declared boldly, "Good, I'll go meet them too." The white tiger let out a low roar that shook the mountains, leaped, and in an instant arrived at another area teeming with ancient blood demon kings. Without hesitation, Fang Qian unfurled his flawless domain like a tidal wave, mercilessly reaping swaths of blood demon kings. Thanks to Yan Wangxiao and the others having stopped hunting ordinary prey and instead targeting participants carrying battle achievements, these ancient blood demon kings were left untouched. Thus Fang Qian's harvest became even faster and smoother than before. His pillar of light began to soar upwards at an astonishing speed. In the distance, Tianjian reached out through the air and drew the crown from the head of a trampled Demon Clan expert. He flicked it lightly with a finger, and the crown flew straight into his own. The two radiances merged, and the numbers on them rapidly accumulated. 630 instantly became 650. Tianjian's face showed satisfaction, and he sneered, "Isn't this much faster than hunting blood demon kings?" Tianqin also nodded happily, saying, "At present, only Gongzi Xiang and Yan Wangxiao are above us. Let's speed up and surpass Yan Wangxiao first." Just then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of something, and her whole expression turned as if she'd seen a ghost. She cried out, "Brother, look." Tianjian followed her gaze, and his smile instantly froze, turning extremely solemn. Just what realm did this ruthless character come from? Half a cup of tea's time earlier, he had already noticed this point of light, which had rocketed from almost 0 achievements to close to 500. Now it had actually surged to 600, almost catching up to them. Tianqin couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath, murmuring, "Everyone else has stopped, yet he alone continues the slaughter." Could it be that he wants to directly challenge Gongzi Xiang? That's Gongzi Xiang of the Sage Realm. Has he gone mad? Elsewhere, Liu Baiyan expressionlessly took the crown from a trembling expert's hands. But his eyes held no intention of letting him go, a flash of ferocity, and with one claw strike he obliterated him, body and soul. A cold voice, dripping with utmost contempt, squeezed through his teeth, "You, worthy of competing with me for prey." He backhandedly merged that crown into his own, and the number on it instantly jumped from 500 to 560. He licked his lips, his gaze chillingly fixed into the distance, muttering to himself, HMPH, "Soon I'll surpass those 2 Asura clansmen. Next, it's Yan Wangxiao." Just as he spoke, someone in the crowd was suddenly drawn by a beam of light rapidly soaring. Staring fixedly, he exclaimed in shock, 600, "Who is that, actually surpassing me? Could there be a powerhouse from some realm who has been hiding their strength all along?" His eyes flickered with uncertainty, and he warned darkly, "You'd better stop while you're ahead, otherwise you'll be the next one hunted." But at that moment, from another battlefield, a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering boom suddenly erupted. Yan Wangxiao, smiling faintly, took the crown from an expert at the 4th decline of the Heavenly Man stage. He said lightly, "I'll let you off this time, go." The other party showed gratitude and hastily fled in panic. Yan Wangxiao merged the crown into his own, and the number 700 instantly became 800. His gaze looked far toward Gongzi Xiang, and he declared loudly, "The truce monument, only you and I are qualified to contend for it." But the next moment, he noticed a beam of light that was crazily soaring, and his expression suddenly changed, exclaiming, 700. Wasn't it just 500 just now? What divine being is this? For a time, Fang Qian's wildly surging beam became the most eye-catching focal point of the entire battlefield. Even Gongzi Xiang flicked the blood off his longsword and cast a sidelong glance over. In his eyes that surveyed heaven and earth, a trace of appreciation appeared, and he declared with majesty, "One who dares to cross swords with us, even in defeat, is honored." Fang Qian, undistracted and focused, slaughtered in all directions, relying on his nearly limitless domain. Finally, when only one small divine ring remained, the battlefield that had once been a red tide was left with only sparse, ancient blood demon kings. They seemed to sense something and retreated into the volcano one after another. When he looked at the beam above his head, it had already reached 120 zhang, while Gongzi Xiang's had reached 160 zhang. Fang Chen frowned, saying, "Still such a big gap." It had to be said, Gongzi Xiang was simply invincible, but he still had one chance. Fang Chen's gaze turned to the volcano at the center of the battlefield. The remaining blood demon kings on the battlefield had all retreated into the volcano. To surpass Gongzi Xiang, there was no way but to go inside. Without another word, he leaped toward the volcano's summit. At the same time, Liu Baianhuang, Tian Jian, and Yan Wang, Xi, also finished off the huntable targets. The rest either escaped or hid. Liu Baianhuang's pillar of light had reached 80 zhang. Tian Jian's reached 90 zhang. As for Yan Wang Xiao, it reached 100 zhang. But all three's gazes were drawn to the two most brilliant beams on the battlefield. One was Gongzi Xiang's 160 zhang, the other was the unknown expert's 120 zhang. Liu Baianhuang said grimly, "The second stage is about to arrive. The decisive moment to determine victory is at hand." Watching Fang Chen rush toward the volcano's summit, he flashed and teleported there as well. Tian Jian snorted coldly. "Let's go see which realm this ruthless character hails from." Yan Wang Xiao's eyes gleamed sharply. "I want to see for myself just what background this person challenging Gongzi Xiang has." Meanwhile, Gongzi Xiang glanced around, noticed their movements, and sheathed his sword. An unparalleled imperial aura instantly appeared at the volcano's summit, radiating in all directions. With hands clasped behind his back, he looked down upon all living beings and said coldly, "Without us, how can there be talk of contesting the world? We are here." As his words fell, beams of feathery light suddenly descended from the sky. Yan Wang Xiao spread his snow-white feathered wings, holy light radiating around him like an angel descending, and declared, "Northern Heaven Realm's Yan Wang Xiao is here." Then heaven and earth suddenly darkened as a thick cloud of demonic Kai blotted out the sun. The dark cloud contracted, condensing into an unruly, untamed youth descending slowly. Ancient demon realm's Liu Baianhuang is here. Immediately after, the crimson volcano trembled violently as a group of 4-star ancient blood demon kings escorted the Tian siblings to the summit. Tian Jian raised his head proudly. Southern Heaven Realm's Tian Jian is here. The 4 great dignitaries of the 5th decline of the Heavenly Man stage gathered at the volcano's peak. Their gazes turned to the foot of the mountain, where a youth clad in white stood atop a Heavenly Man 5th decline fierce tiger, striding through the air. Fang Chen swept his gaze over them, his eyes blazing like torches, and declared in a ringing voice, "Central Earth Realm's Fang Chen is here." At this, Liu Baianhuang cried out in disbelief, "How can it be you? Impossible. This is impossible. How could you slay 1,200 blood demon kings? What cultivation level are you even at?" Tian Jian also couldn't accept it, exclaiming, "How could a barren place like the Central Earth give birth to someone like this? I don't believe it, I don't believe it." Fang Chen clasped his hands behind his back, glanced at the two, and shook his head slightly. "You know nothing about me." Then his gaze shot toward Gongzi Xiang, and he declared loudly, "You have finally come before me. As a reward, I bestow upon you a defeat." The entire arena fell silent. They had the feeling that Fang Chen had stolen Gongzi Xiang's lines. The defiant lad secretly rolled his eyes. Today, Fang Chen had truly delivered a masterclass in supreme, unbridled swagger. After speaking, Fang Chen felt a surge of secret satisfaction. No wonder the young emperor and Gongzi Xiang's imperial self always loved to posture, occasionally savoring the feeling of overwhelming heaven. Shredding awesomeness wasn't half bad. Gongzi Xiang gripped his sword hilt, slowly drawing his blade, his gaze condescending. "Those who challenge our majesty shall end with the sword." Liu Baianhuang, murderous intent chilling, gnashed his teeth. "You stole my desolate ancient token, snatched my battle merits. Today, even the king of heaven himself can't save you." Tian Jian snorted coldly. "A mere brat from the Central Earth dares to act so brazenly before my Southern Heaven realm. You don't know the meaning of death." The prodigies of the 3 realms successively revealed their killing intent. The overwhelming pressure of the celestial decay descended upon them all at once. The volcano beneath their feet could not withstand the combined pressure of the 3 great lords, rumbling with violent tremors. The blood demon kings, who had retreated inside, surged out in unease. The white tiger crouched low, letting out a fearful, low growl. Its massive form trembled and quivered under their oppressive might. Only Fang Chen stood proudly, utterly unafraid of their pressure. His eyes were disdainful, and he said coldly, drawing swords against me, "You have never seen the heavens." With that, he extended his palm and slammed it down toward the volcanic crater below. The flawless domain instantly descended, covering the entire crater. The Star-Blood Demon Kings that had emerged all exploded into bloody mist, without exception. Moreover, the domains layered one after another until all 10 domains were exhausted, plunging the volcano into a deathly silence. Every Star-Blood Demon King hiding within was annihilated. And the pillar of light above his head instantly surged to a height of 160 zhang. In the span of a mere breath, 10 domain activations had suppressed and slain 400 Blood Demon Kings. Gongzi Xiang, Yanwang Xiao, Liu Baianhuang, and the Tianjian siblings all had shocked expressions flickering in their eyes. They wouldn't be overly shocked by any domain, for in the vast myriad worlds, there were cultivators of all kinds of domains. But the domain before them stirred an unprecedented unease within them. Merely having wounds on their bodies, yet a single domain directly killed them, body and soul obliterated without any resistance. Even as hundreds of Blood Demon Kings desperately launched essence counterattacks, all the essence that struck Fang Chen vanished like mud oxen entering the sea, leaving no trace. It was unimaginable how powerful Fang Chen would be when he proved his Tao and ascended to Great Lord in the future, whether slaughtering them would be as effortless as before their very eyes. What was even more terrifying was that the more formidable a domain, the more its number of uses was typically restricted by the heavenly Tao. Fang Chen was exactly the opposite, capable of using it a full 10 times. Ask yourself among those present who could be his match in the future. Tianqin felt his scalp tingle. What kind of monster has the Central Plains bred? Gongzi Xiang and the others wore grave expressions. The gazes they directed at Fang Chen held an undisguisable fear. Given time, the geniuses of all realms would be nothing more than ants beneath his feet. At that time, meeting Fang Chen would be like mayflies gazing upon the blue sky. Kill him! Liu Baianhuang was afraid, a chill rising from the depths of his heart. If Fang Chen did not die, he would find no peace in sleep or meal. Tianjian also revealed a murderous intent, saying, "The Central Plains is not worthy of such a figure." Gongzi Xiang swept his sword across the land, a terrifying sword aura, splitting the volcano beneath them in two. He shouted majestically, "Stand down! Have we permitted you to kill him?" Liu Baianhuang and Tianjian showed unwillingness in their eyes, but did not dare to cross the edge of Gongzi Xiang's blade by an inch. Gongzi Xiang looked at Fang Chen and said, "Return with us to the divine capital. We shall help you enter the sage realm." Fang Chen said without hesitation, "All 3 of you, come at me together. Stake the fate of your own worlds and contend for the crown of this 1,000-year battle." He stretched out his hand, and the primordial sky imprisoning gourd flickered into his palm. His gaze swept over and settled on Liu Baianhuang, his eyes turning fierce instantly. "I'll start with you first." This man had the strongest killing intent toward him and posed the greatest threat. Since he was starting a killing spree, let it begin with him. The moment the primordial sky imprisoning gourd appeared, the 3 immediately felt intense unease. Liu Baianhuang's eyelids twitched violently, his soul trembling with fear, and he urgently shouted, "Strike quickly, immortal palace, come." Behind him, vast surging clouds and mist abruptly revealed a magnificent, illusory mirage, within which towering immortal palaces, layered towers, and divine gateways pierced the heavens. With a thunderous roar from Liu Baianhuang, those originally illusory palaces and towers forcibly materialized into solid, tangible entities. Tianjian also struck without hesitation at that moment. His body shuddered violently, the bloodline within surging and roaring like a boiling torrent, as countless fine black threads shot out from behind him, piercing the air and all aimed at Fang Chen. This was precisely the innate divine ability of the Dark Asura clan, Puppet. Once entangled by these black threads, the target would be turned into a marionette, manipulated at will. A solidified immortal palace and a black ocean woven from threads, both carrying world, destroying momentum, slammed toward Fang Chen simultaneously. This was the full-force attack of 2 great lords of celestial decay. Fang Chen's eyes also flashed with explosive killing intent, locking firmly onto Liu Baianhuang as he instantly activated the primordial sky imprisoning gourd. Dealing with both at once was enough. However, at the very moment he opened his mouth to shout the three characters, Liu, Bai, and Huang, the entire hunting ground suddenly resounded with low, solemn horn blasts. Wherever that sound passed, the world turned bone, chillingly cold. Fang Qian's hair stood on end uncontrollably, and goosebumps instantly covered his skin. Liu Bai and Huang and Tian Jian's expressions suddenly changed dramatically. The two hurriedly retracted their innate divine abilities, no longer daring to strike at Fang Qian, and completely withdrew their surging auras back into their bodies. Even Gongzi Xiang sheathed his longsword at this moment, focusing his mind and casting his gaze around. Yan Wangxiao, who had remained silent and not made a move, warned gravely, Fang Qian, quickly put away your treasure and suppress all your aura. Don't speak, and above all, don't make any noise. Otherwise, you will surely die. Fang Qian's heart paused slightly, a thought flashing through. Could it be they fear their primordial skyam, prisoning gourd, and are deliberately setting a trap to fool me? However, when he glimpsed even Gongzi Xiang solemnly sheathing his sword, he immediately understood this was real. Fang Qian promptly and decisively complied. Others might play tricks, but Gongzi Xiang would not. Precisely speaking, he disdained such things. Meanwhile, the white tiger beneath him had already silently crouched low, even suppressing its heavy breath deliberately, not daring to make the slightest sound. It slowly extended a tiger paw, and once again drew a mark of a scythe and skull on the ground. Fang Qian's heart jolted with alarm. Was it the legendary third type of ancient dark creature? Was it truly so terrifying, strong as Gongzi Xiang, arrogant and untamed as Liu Bai and Huang? Even they had now stopped their fighting and ceased all words and movements. Giants and blood demons were also ancient dark creatures, weren't they? Why was this third kind so uniquely dreadful? Just as his thoughts raced, Yan Wangxiao's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Be careful, the third ancient dark creature is coming. Fang Qian glanced at the others and found their expressions unchanged. Clearly they had not detected this telepathic message, which secretly surprised him. The methods of the Angel clan were truly wondrous. He tried to reply inwardly, Senior, what is it called? Death Wraith. The two words Yan Wangxiao transmitted were extremely solemn. Fang Qian's heart chilled. Just from the name alone, he knew it was nothing benign. He pondered and asked again, is it even more dangerous than the giants and blood demons? Yan Wangxiao's voice became increasingly grave. It is so dangerous that it nearly drove itself to extinction. Now, only this Linlang hunting ground and a very few worlds still have remnants. Fang Qian grew even more puzzled. How could something drive itself to extinction? Why? Yan Wangxiao continued transmitting. Death wraiths are in a soul state, immune to all attacks except on the soul level. Moreover, unless a creature of the same realm is proficient in powerful soul defense techniques, it cannot withstand even a single scythe strike from them. Hiss. Fang Qian couldn't help but inhale sharply. He finally understood the terror of these dark creatures. Others couldn't harm it in the slightest, yet it could easily reap the lives of living beings. In the world, those proficient in soul arts or possessing soul talents and domains were already extremely rare. The vast majority of living beings, if encountering them, would undoubtedly die. Yan Wangxiao added in a slow, heavy voice, over 10,000 years, not a single world invaded by death wraiths has survived. All life within was annihilated. And when there are no more living beings to reap, the death wraiths will turn on one another, nearly wiping themselves out until only a few extremely powerful ones remain. Fang Qian suddenly understood. He instantly recalled how the ancient giants raised Asura clan villages in the southern celestial realm. Why did the giants stipulate hunting only once every 100 years? It was precisely to give the prey a chance to multiply and thrive, lest they be hunted clean in one go and leave nothing to hunt later. The death wraiths, on the other hand, suffered precisely from pushing things to the absolute extreme. Yan Wangxiao stared intently into the distance, where chilling winds blew and a chaotic, indistinct shadow was cast upon the land, dyeing it pitch, black like ink. His telepathic message abruptly turned extremely solemn. They're here. Remember, you must not make a single sound. These dead spirits in the hunting grounds were selected from the strongest lingering remnants. You can imagine how dangerous they are. Fang Qian's expression instantly grew deadly serious. He dared not imagine how powerful those dead spirits must be, having survived the brutal mutual slaughter to the very end. The weakest would be at the human races, 5 decays of a heavenly human level, and some might even have reached the human sage realm. No wonder even young Master Xiang was on high alert. He quickly stowed the rebellious brat perched on his shoulder and tossed it into his spatial storage artifact to prevent the little thing from making any noise. Then he glanced at the white tiger. This cunning old fox was even more afraid of death than he was, so there was no need for extra warning. Finally, there was the puppet of the three, crowned Asura king. Since it was a puppet, he worried even less. However, what Fang Chen failed to notice, shrouded in the thick black mist, was that the female Asura's eyes silently shifted. After confirming everything was flawless, Fang Chen held his breath and focused, silently watching the eerily vast projection in the distance. It seemed to possess a consciousness of its own, moving rapidly in all directions across the land. Crack! Suddenly, in a tumbled pile of rocks not far away, a powerful cultivator at the three decays of a heavenly human level, who had been hiding there, accidentally stepped on a loose stone, producing a crisp sound. The sound was extremely distant, and Fang Chen and the others barely picked up a faint noise, no louder than a breath. Yet the shadow, which was much farther from that rock pile, instantly detected it. The shadow, which had been drifting away, abruptly reversed and shot toward the rock pile like a streak of black lightning. The three decays expert was horrified and hastily activated his deity transformation, Venerable's teleportation ability, trying to escape this calamity. But the shadow was simply too fast. Before he could even react, the shadow had already completely engulfed the rock pile, turning the area into pitch black darkness where one could not see their own hand. A hair-raising, shrill scream had barely begun before it was abruptly cut short within the shadow. As the shadow slowly receded, everyone's pupils constricted. The man inside the rock pile had already been drained of all life. His eyes were wide as bronze bells, his face frozen in boundless terror, and both arms were rigidly shielding his neck. This was an expert at the three decays of a heavenly human level, yet he had perished in a single encounter. Cold sweat beaded on Fang Chen's forehead. He did not dare to draw even a single breath. Everyone else was the same, not daring to make the slightest noise. Even Yan Wangxi no longer dared to use spiritual voice transmission. A deathly silence fell over the world, with only that black cloud drifting silently like a ghostly apparition across the desolate hunting grounds. Occasionally, a stray blood demon king was careless enough to be engulfed. Its heavy breathing and powerful heartbeat were instantly captured by the shadow up close, and it would after all dead on the spot. Fang Chen watched, his heart racing with fear. It wasn't just about staying silent. That didn't guarantee survival. If you were careless enough to be engulfed by that dark cloud, it remained extremely perilous, a brush with death 9 times out of 10. Fortunately, the 5 of them plus the tiger were all extremely prudent and would never make the rookie mistake of causing a disturbance. But then, as is the way with unexpected accidents, one happened anyway. The cliff face of the volcano below the one that had been split by a single sword strike had held on tenaciously for a long while, but finally could hold no longer. A thunderous rumble echoed as the entire mountainside abruptly collapsed. The deafening roar boomed through the heavens and earth like a sudden clap of thunder, and the mass of shadow that had just drifted away naturally detected it the instant it happened. Fang Chen's body froze. He stared blankly at young Master Xiang, the one who had cleaved the volcano with his sword, and a single thought welled up in his mind that he ached to speak aloud. Show off and you get smitten by lightning, serves him right. He had considered all sorts of ways they might be discovered by that shadow. But he had never imagined that the culprit would be the aftershock from young Master Xiang's ostentatious sword strike. Whoosh! The shadow gave them no time to breathe. It instantly engulfed the volcano beneath their feet. Several lingering ones, star, 2-star, and 3-star blood demon kings perished instantly without any suspense, their shrill cries piercing upward and flooding into their ears. Faintly, Fang Chen could almost hear their hysterical curses. Those screams so close to his ears struck Fang Chen with icy dread, his instincts screaming at him to flee. But reason told him that to move now was death. No matter how fast he was, he could never outrun that shadow. Young Master Xiang and the other 3, along with the white tiger beneath their feet, all maintained their composure with supreme effort, remaining perfectly still. It was a credit to them that they were either supreme lords of various domains or beast kings who had clawed their way up in these hunting grounds. Any ordinary person simply could not have possessed such formidable willpower. Their only option was to wait, hoping the shadow would finish scouring the volcanic ruins and depart on its own. The wait was not long, in truth. After only a few breaths, as 2 more screams were abruptly silenced, the shadow pulled back from the debris and slowly drifted away into the distance. Fang Chen was drenched in nervous sweat. Liu Baianhuang, Yan Wang, Xiao, and Tian Jian, too, had their eyes locked on the retreating shadow, their expressions strained to the limit. Thankfully, the shadow was at last about to leave. Once the shadow had completely moved beyond their field of view, they could seize the chance to escape and get away. Yet, just as it was on the verge of moving far off, that mass of shadow halted again without any warning. Fang Chen's heart lurched violently, an extremely ominous feeling instantly coursed through his entire body. Yan Wang, Xiao, and the others' faces all changed color simultaneously. Oh no, this is huge trouble. It seemed the shadow had suddenly caught on. And sure enough, that huge mass of shadow eerily floated up into the air and began slowly creeping toward the space above the volcanic crater, clearly probing to see if there were any fish that had slipped the net. Fang Chen made a snap decision, stomping heavily on the white tiger's head to signal it to flee at once. This white tiger was a ruthless survivor from countless battles, not one to bury its head in the sand. It understood that this situation required an immediate decision. A split second's hesitation meant everlasting perdition. Young Master Zhang, Liu Baianhuang, Yan Wang Xiao, and Tian Jian all demonstrated equally decisive determination. Young Master Zhang abruptly pointed into the distance and declared in a low, commanding voice, "We, the sovereign, are everywhere." The moment the words fell, a thread of profound law energy poured out from his fingertip. However, his movement immediately allowed the shadow to pinpoint their exact position. The next instant, everything before their eyes went black as they were fully engulfed in that deadly, pitch-dark shadow. Only now did Fang Chen realize with bone-chilling shock that this was no mere shadow. It was a living, breathing, bizarre life form that had compressed its body into a flat shadow form. Its pair of blood, red eyes burned like two ghostly flames in the deathly silence of the shadow, cruelly searching for its hidden prey. Almost instantly, it detected Fang Chen and the others' presence. A jet-black blade, bone, chillingly cold and striking straight at the soul, slashed toward them all at waist level without a sound. A strange, squelching thud was all that was heard. Young Master Zhang, the first to have moved, was also the first to be attacked. His body instantly burst into a hazy mist. It turned out he had already used law energy to phase his body out. His true form had long escaped the peril and appeared outside the shadow, where he once more held his breath and went into concealment. Tian Jian's face sank. He too struck out fiercely at the same moment. Just as the blade reached his body, a puppet, identical to him in every way, appeared out of thin air, emanating a distinct law fluctuation. The blade viciously slashed through his form, yet the fatal wound was eerily transferred to the puppet. A shrill, agonized cry immediately burst forth from within the puppet. As for Tian Jian himself, he evaded the lethal strike completely unscathed and used that split second to teleport beyond the shadow, hiding far away, again holding his breath and arm, remaining perfectly still. The silent blade likewise swept through Liu Baianhuang's body, but he remained unhurried. He was, after all, the most thoroughly prepared person among all the contestants this time. A faint crack was heard as a certain artifact in his embrace instantly shattered, releasing a soul fluctuation at the lower level. This was, shockingly, an extremely rare law of soul defense. Liu Baianhuang, having evaded the strike in that instant, decisively teleported away. Just before his departure, a single glance revealed that Fang Chen, the most quick-witted among them, had already ridden his white tiger out of the shadow's reach, likewise skirt. Gee, that life-reaping blow. A savage gleam flashed violently in Liu Baianhuang's eyes. They had all relied on their ultimate life, saving law powers to narrowly escape that attack, yet Fang Chen sought to slip away so effortlessly. Utterly delusional. Without a second thought, he flung a bottle of bizarrely writhing silver liquid straight at Fang Chen. The bottle burst apart on impact, and the uncanny liquid, as if alive, clung tenaciously to Fang Chen and his white tiger, cementing them firmly in place. Naturally, such a massive disturbance drew the attention of the Death Soul once more. A terrifying soul blade coalesced again, rushing straight for the man and beast. Far off, Yan Wang Xiao's expression shifted, but he did not hesitate. Seizing the moment when Fang Chen absorbed all aggression, he decisively teleported away to escape. They all broke free successfully. Only Fang Chen was left trapped, completely ensnared within that life, claiming shadow. Liu Baianhuang, having fled the shadow, looked back and sneered derisively. "Fight me, are you even worthy? Your battle record and that eerie gourd of yours are all mine now." But before his words had fully faded, in the very next moment, a brilliant purple light flared brilliantly upon his wrist. A berserk mass of spatial power instantly engulfed him, forcibly teleporting him back against his will. In the next instant, everything before his eyes went dark. He had been directly transported right in front of Fang Chen and the white tiger. Upon Fang Chen's wrist, a purple ring shone brightly and shockingly. Liu Baianhuang also wore one. Liu Baianhuang was horrified. He had just begun to demand when that accursed ring had been placed on him, but the dreadful soul blade had already swept over in silence, penetrating straight through his body. Crack! Fortunately, a remnant force of a soul law within him once more blocked that lethal strike. Likewise, Fang Chen and the white tiger were spared thanks to this. Fang Chen shot him an icy glare, and with a beckoning gesture, retrieved the ring. Simultaneously, the white tiger finally shook free from the silver liquid's grip, and in a desperate teleport, carried Fang Chen out of the shadow. Witnessing this, Liu Baianhuang erupted in towering rage. That damn bastard had caused him to waste yet another life, saving Law for nothing. But he had no time to be angry now. Suppressing his fury, he immediately followed suit and teleported away. Thus, the 5 people and the tiger, who had been plunged into dire peril, all managed to break free successfully. They stood at 5 separate points around the shadow's perimeter, maintaining an exceedingly vast distance from one another. But having witnessed the shadow's teleportation speed, far surpassing that of a 5 decays of heaven and man expert, none dared to make a rash move. They all suppressed their auras to the utmost, their bodies as if frozen, utterly motionless. Because at this moment, whoever moved first would instantly draw the shadow's attention, granting the others a chance to flee. Having struck empty repeatedly and failed to kill a single one, the shadow seethed with rage, surging violently in place. A soul-rending, piercing howl swept out in all directions like a storm. Fang Chen instantly felt a stabbing, unbearable pain in his divine soul. When he looked at Gongzi Xiang and the others far off, they were all frowning deeply, clearly enduring the same agony. Yet they clenched their teeth and held on, still not making even the slightest sound. The shadow, consumed by fury, churned its massive form like boiling water, countless eerie bubbles erupting all over its surface. Then that stretch of shadow began to shrink continuously, and its central part rose higher and higher. 1 zhang, 2 zhang, 3 zhang, 4 zhang, 5 zhang, 6 zhang. Only when it had swelled to a staggering height of 20 zhang did the shadow at last stabilize. No, it could no longer be called a mere shadow. It was a 20 zhanged, all majestic specter, draped in a black shadow cloak that seemed to siphon all light, footless and silently suspended in midair. Beneath its enormous, drooping hood lay pure all-consuming void, save for a pair of blood, red eyes that burned with cold, merciless cruelty. Its skeletal claws, seemingly formed from black shadow, tightly gripped a lithe, reaping scythe 20 zhang in length. The scythe's blade radiated such terrible sharpness that it made everyone's soul tremble and shudder. That was the very scythe that had been silently harvesting their lives a moment ago. And this colossal, suffocatingly majestic black-robed specter before them was the Death Soul's true form. Fang Chen felt a chill of awe settle deep in his heart. He noticed that upon the specter's hood floated 5 semi-transparent stars, symbols of soul essence. This precisely indicated that it was merely the weakest of 5-star Death Soul within this hunting ground. Yet even so, just moments ago, it had nearly annihilated all 5 people and the tiger completely. Only now did Fang Chen fully believe that those worlds invaded by Death Souls might truly have been wiped out without exception. He simply could not imagine what those worlds could possibly use to defend against such a supremely dangerous dark creature. What troubled Fang Chen even more was that the Death Soul, having revealed its true form, was still in the grip of extreme fury. It had no intention of letting things go so easily. Its blood, red eyes swept around sharply, as though sensing that several of them still lurked nearby. Abruptly, it spun its body and stared directly at the spot where Liu Baianhuang was hiding. Because he had used his soul defense law twice in succession, faint residual fluctuations of law still lingered around him, making him stand out more than the others. Liu Baianhuang's face instantly turned deathly pale. Damn it! He no longer had any laws capable of defending against soul attacks, only escape laws remained. But if he used them now, the Death Soul would lock onto him completely and pursue him to the death without end. Wouldn't that benefit everyone else present? Especially that bastard Fang Chen. That wretch had first used his life, saving Law to survive a calamity. Was he now supposed to escape with his life at Liu Baianhuang's expense? Why should he? A murderous glint exploded in Liu Bianhuang's eyes, a cold, vicious light gleaming. He slowly withdrew a blood-colored token from his robe. On the token was engraved a crimson blood character radiating boundless killing intent. The moment this object appeared, Fang Chen felt an uncontrollable, violent palpitation rise in his chest. Simultaneously, an identical blood character uncontrollably surfaced on his forehead. This was the mark of the chaotic ancient blood Marquis. That token had instantly resonated with the mark within Fang Chen's body, making it manifest on its own. This mark contained a sliver of the chaotic ancient blood Marquis' power. Though the power it held was exceedingly faint in this breath-held stalemate, it was like a bright lamp in the dark of night, visible no matter how far away. The Death Soul naturally detected this aura. It spun around decisively, its blood, red eyes locking onto Fang Chen with cruel precision. Liu Bianhuang revealed a ferocious, triumphant sneer. Let's see you survive this time. In the distance, Gongzi Xiang, Yanwang Xiao, and Tianzhan merely watched this scene in silence, utterly indifferent. They all still possessed more or less life, saving methods that could have rescued Fang Chen, but why should they help? They had only just met, none needed to waste his precious life, saving law for him. The Death Soul slowly raised its enormous scythe, emitting wave after wave of excited shrieks. Fang Chen's heart instantly plummeted into an ice-cold, bottomless abyss. He first coldly looked at Liu Bianhuang's full-faced malicious grin, then at the distant Tianzhan and the other two, who planned to seize the moment of his demise to flee, and finally, at the faint, far-off silhouettes of the various realm competitors, all expecting his death. Stealing his heart, he suddenly reached out and retrieved a lotus leaf, pitch black as ink. This was precisely a leaf of the calamity, dispelling Black Lotus. That Evos, smiling great libationer of the myriad demon great state, had personally inscribed a law upon it. That law's name was the Perpetual Smile. Fang Chen's voice was icy as he shouted, "Don't say I didn't warn you all. If I'm to die, then we all die together." With that, he decisively activated the Perpetual Smile law inscribed upon it. With a soft whoosh, an intangible, formless law power swept across the vast land in an instant, sparing no one present. Gongzi Xiang and the other three, being nearest, were affected first. Though they were all exalted at the 5 decays of heaven and man realm, and the inscribed law's influence on them was much weaker. Caught off guard, they still instantly succumbed. A smile tugged uncontrollably at the corner of Gongzi Xiang's mouth as he laughed and spoke, "Zhen." Despite his mighty cultivation dispelling the law's effect in a flash and regaining clarity instantly, he had already uttered a sound, completely exposing his presence. On the other side, Yanwang Xiao and Tianzhan also burst out laughing involuntarily. When they came to their senses, their faces all changed drastically.